Today, the sexual gender-based violence survivors of the 2007-2008 post-election violence in Kenya gathered together both physically and virtually to commemorate the 7th year of the International Day for the Elimination of Sexual Violence in Conflict.
When we were talking to survivors and we asked them, when I talk about reparation, what does it mean to you? And they came up with their own understanding of what it was. They said, kurudisha, kurekebisha, loso, ukahulisia, duoko, kushokia. These are all words that make sense to them because that's what reparation is to them. But they also said it's a form of forgiveness. It is about assistance. It is about support. It's about acknowledgement of pain, acknowledgement of suffering. And they also said, finally, it is a right. And for them, that right is important.
What happened to us 13 years ago was very much traumatic and overwhelming. Homes were lost, properties, jobs, businesses, lives, educational opportunities, friends, loved ones, wives and husbands. Many women got raped, men also were castrated, had their private parts mutilated or cut off, chopped off, and the remembering of just what some of our colleagues went through, like having their private parts chopped off and being forced to and cut into pieces and fed to their families and to themselves, it was really devastating. Because there are certain times the attackers could come, find that somebody was not circumcised, and they chop off their private parts and they cut them into pieces, put them on the plate and force their spouses to make some ugali, and then force their children to, with that, the victim from whom the private part has been cut, to eat. And then from that point, this person is bleeding and at the same time being forced to eat part of his body, they end up dying. So it was really traumatic. So trying to start all over again from the scratch after having gone through all those sufferings, it has been very hard for us, the survivors. No help has been given to us in terms of compensation or counseling to enable us to heal fully from the suffering we went through during the conflict. The restoration fund for justice that I've had just being mentioned, that the president went to the parliament and mentioned that it was going to be given out to the victims, has never reached us. I don't know where it went. That is the fund that could have been used to help us restart our lives, but it has never reached us at all, and neither have I heard that it is being disbursed even to the victims, so, or the survivors. So there is this kind of anger that has been that is bottled up inside us and which has never been let out in order for us to heal. And this is hurting us very much. This anger, coupled with the suffering that we have never been able to recover from, could be dangerous to the peace and stability of the country. And therefore, we are praying and asking that something should be done by the government to at least try to address what we have gone through.
In 2007, I was a 16-year-old girl. I had not voted in the elections. But some men somewhere decided that I was going to be a target to teach my community not to challenge the authority. And that day, on 31st, I was gang raped. And out of that, I got a child. And then hell just broke loose for me. I was not able to go back to school. I lost everything that I had, including myself. Sometimes you might be alive, but you are not alive. That night, I died 1,000 times. But today, I have risen 1,000,000 times. After what I had gone through with the pregnancy that I had, I didn't know what to do. I thought that abortion would be an option for me. It was not possible. When I gave birth, I was bitter. I wanted to take out all the pain and all the anger, but I didn't know how. I didn't know which way to use to get the pain out inside, out from inside. I didn't know how to do it. And that child became an object for me to get the pain out of me. And I became very terrible. I lost myself. People didn't know who I was anymore. I had drowned in these waters that I did not know how to get myself out. And I got myself in a whole lot of hell. I dropped out in Form 3. I have no education. But one day, when I had decided to speak, I met with Jacqueline Terry of Grace again. And that is the day when that light, that ray of light came inside my life. And I decided from there, I am going to make a change in my life. It was so much for me to handle because of the trauma, the neglect, the stigma. It has not been an easy thing for me up to date. It has not been an easy thing for me to recover from everything that I have lost. I have not recovered. I tried to, but I am not yet there. It is almost 13 years now. 14 years, I mean. And I still find myself almost every day on the same road. I don't cry because I am bitter. I have been working out myself for so many times, for so long. These tears are just, it's the experience of what I go through every day. But out of that, I still choose to look at the good things. That I am not the same girl whom I used to be. I am not the same woman people would talk about so badly, give names and let it get inside my head. I am not the same woman who will be abused and keep quiet. I am not the same woman because I chose to challenge. That I have become an advocate against sexual violence, and I can speak up against sexual violence, and I can encourage other women, both locally, internationally, globally, to come out and speak up against sexual violence.
I'm a survivor of the violence, and I have a baby from her. She's now 13 years old. I call her Princess, but that's the story for another day because she dodged 3 abortions. I tried 3 attempts at abortion, but it just backfired. And thereafter, she gave birth to her, had her, and now she's pregnant. She's 13 years old. She's I don't want to say Girl Scout or Boy Scout because she's a tomboy, but a piece of work and somebody who's very loving, and I don't regret ever making the decision or the choice to keep her. And reparations actually just repairs you and it does not necessarily pay you or compensate you accordingly for the pain that you have gone through. But the reparation agenda is mainly it's manifold. It's manifold. It takes care of you physically. It takes care of you emotionally. If you want counseling, it takes care of you medically. So depending on your needs and depending what your approach is, reparations is the way to go. So just that acknowledgement alone, for some it is enough. For others, they want to be paid back for what they feel was a loss to them personally and for what they gained as a child. What somebody has to pay for this. Who will that be if not government? And government owes its citizens. It has got a responsibility for its own citizens, and so therefore we expect that they shall be competitive, and hence the need for reparation, so that it covers all the needs of an individual. So it is not necessarily that we just want money for whatever reason, but really that we want a holistic care, just like all the other. It's our right as citizens for reparations for sexual violence, especially in Kenya, and also in Kenya we are there's a level in which it's called by the UN. It is characterized or categorized by the UN as an area of conflict, but it's not as bad as that in Congo. It's not as bad as that in Iraq or other countries in Africa, where it is a country of interest. So it is important for reparations just to show that as even governments have acknowledged that they have done something in covering and protecting and keeping and healing their citizens.
My name is Naitore Madenge. I work at Physicians for Human Rights as the head of office for Physicians for Human Rights Kenya. One of the things that we are currently focusing on is the upcoming 2022 general elections. Based on previous cycles, whenever we have elections in Kenya, we have numerous cases of sexual violence that are reported. So it's very critical at this juncture that we work with civil society organizations, we work with the state to ensure that we do not have a repeat of 2017 or a repeat of 0708 when it comes to electoral related sexual violence. So what needs to be done? One of the things that needs to be done is first of all to ensure that all the police officers that will be deployed across the country have the requisite skills, capacity development for them to ensure that they can respond to cases of sexual violence should these cases of sexual violence arise. But the government also needs to put contingency measures to avert any occurrence of cases of sexual violence. At Physicians for Human Rights, we are also working with healthcare providers to train them, build their capacity to ensure that they're in a position to document and store evidence that is collected in any cases of sexual violence. And this is the only way that will ensure accountability and justice for survivors of sexual violence.
Reporting for Journalists for Justice, I'm Susan Kelly.